Look around you. Everything that defines modern life runs on borrowed value. The car you drive is leased. The apartment you live in belongs to a bank. The groceries you buy are paid for with a card that charges you for the privilege of convenience. Even your leisure, your music, your shows, they were rented through invisible pipelines that charge you every month just to keep your access alive. For decades, we've been told this is progress, that credit is empowerment, that borrowing is a gateway to comfort. But what if it's the opposite? What if the most advanced societies on Earth have quietly built a system where people no longer live freely? They lease their existence? You see, we aren't free citizens anymore. We're contracted participants in a trillion-dollar ecosystem that needs us in debt to survive. Every paycheck, every monthly bill, every loan repayment, they all feed a machine far bigger than any of us. A machine that never sleeps, never forgives, and never stops charging interest. This is the history of debt, where every payment has a past, and every freedom comes with fine print. So ask yourself, what if modern slavery doesn't use chains, just contracts? The story begins with a dream, the American dream. For generations, people believed success meant ownership. The house with a white fence, the car in the driveway, the job that paid the bills. It was a promise so powerful it became cultural scripture. Work hard, save wisely, and someday you'll own something that's truly yours. But the fine print was never shown in the commercials. Because to own that home, you'd first have to borrow hundreds of thousands of dollars, often more than you'll ever physically touch in your lifetime. And for the next 30 years, you'd pay it back with interest so high, you'd end up paying for 2 houses just to keep one. Miss a few payments, and you don't own anything anymore. The dream resets. The property reverts to its true master, the bank. This is how the illusion was built. Ownership became a brand, not a reality. And the banks, they became the landlords of the modern world. Invisible, silent, patient. But this isn't a new idea. In ancient Mesopotamia, nearly 5,000 years ago, debt was already a tool of control. Farmers borrowed grain from temple granaries during bad harvests. When the next harvest failed, they couldn't repay. And their land, their livestock, even their children were taken as payment. Our archaeologists have found clay tablets recording these transactions, etched with the names of men who became bondservants to their creditors. Debt slavery was not a metaphor, it was law. Centuries later, in the Roman Republic, the system evolved, but the chains remained. Citizens who fell into debt could be imprisoned, forced into labor, or sold across the empire. The Latin word for debt, nexum, carried a double meaning. It meant both obligation and bond. You weren't just indebted, you were bound. Fast forward to the present day, and you'll notice something hauntingly familiar. The words have changed, the paperwork is digital, but the mechanism is the same. You borrow value, and in return you pledge your future labor. You sign invisible contracts that quietly dictate the next 20, 30, even 50 years of your life. Only now, your chains come with Wi-Fi. Your worth is scored by algorithms. Your identity is tied to credit reports. Miss one payment, and it's not just your property at risk. It's your social standing, your access to housing, your ability to exist in the system. Modern society didn't abolish slavery. It rebranded it as finance. If the 20th century sold us the illusion of ownership, the 21st perfected the art of renting everything. You don't buy the movie, you rent the right to watch it. You don't own your software, you lease it month by month forever. You don't even own your car. The bank does until it decides otherwise. We call it convenience. The companies call it recurring revenue. But the truth, it's permanent dependency. Think about it. The average person today subscribes to more than 10 services. Music, movies, data storage, cloud access, delivery memberships, digital tools. You no longer pay once to own something. You pay endlessly to borrow it. And in the background, corporations have discovered the ultimate truth. Ownership limits profit. Access multiplies it. That's why we live in a subscription society. From housing to healthcare, from entertainment to education, every essential function of life has been redesigned to extract monthly payments. A mortgage used to end after 30 years. A subscription? Never. But this isn't just economic, it's psychological. The new system doesn't just want your money, it wants your habits. Algorithms study your routines, track your spending, and learn what keeps you paying. Credit scores became the new caste system, a numerical reflection of obedience. The higher your score, the more freedom you're granted. The lower it drops, the tighter the digital leash becomes. And here's the dark brilliance. This isn't forced upon you, you choose it. You click accept terms, you sign 0% APR for 12 months. You swipe buy now, pay later. Every choice feels voluntary until the total bill arrives and you realize your freedom was the product all along. Look around, cities filled with young professionals paying $2,000 a month for apartments I'll never own, cars they'll return in 3 years, and digital subscriptions that vanish the moment the payment fails. We live inside a revolving door, constantly moving, never arriving. But again, this isn't new. After World War II, Western governments encouraged credit expansion to stimulate consumer economies. People were told to borrow, to spend, to build. Debt was rebranded as patriotism, a civic duty. In 1950, the first modern credit card appeared in the U.S. dinner mall, the Diners Club card. By the 1970s, the average American household carried multiple cards, and banks discovered something astonishing. The more people owed, the more loyal they became. They couldn't leave the system because the system owned them. What began as economic recovery became psychological conditioning. Generations were raised to believe that debt wasn't danger. It was normal life. Now, in the digital age, that conditioning has reached perfection. A world where everything you touch, watch, or drive comes with fine print. You don't see the chains because they're invisible, coded in terms of service, reinforced by autopay, buried in cloud servers. Welcome to the subscription age, where the rich buy assets and the rest rent their dreams. Behind every bill, behind every loan and credit score, there's a machine, not a conspiracy, a structure. In the glass towers of Wall Street, traders package your debt into securities, bundles of car loans, student loans, and credit card balances sold as investment products. Your struggles are someone else's profits. The more you owe, the more valuable you become. Meanwhile, central banks print money to stimulate growth. But that growth doesn't come from creation. It comes from credit. When a government issues new currency, it enters circulation as debt. Someone, somewhere, owes it back. With interest. Interest. The silent engine of perpetual control. It ensures the system can never rest. Because every dollar in circulation must eventually return with more attached. That more doesn't exist yet. So the world must keep borrowing endlessly. And who benefits from this treadmill? Those who own the levers, the lenders, the corporations, the institutional investors who profit every time you swipe your card or sign a loan agreement. Picture it cinematically. A dark data center, miles of blinking servers approving microloans in milliseconds, thousands of digital contracts executed without a human glance, each one tying a person to a payment, a fraction of their future labor already sold. Somewhere else in a Wall Street boardroom, a hedge fund manager watches those same debts aggregated into digital assets, traded at lightning speed. To him, your car payment isn't a burden. It's yield. And as you sit at your desk, your paycheck already divided, rent, insurance, loans, subscriptions, the machine hums quietly in the background, feeding on your participation. We call it capitalism, but maybe it's just debt with better branding. Think about the average American worker. They spend 40 years trading hours for income, most of which immediately flows to lenders. By retirement, the average citizen has paid over $500,000 in interest alone. Money that never created value, never built freedom, just maintained the machinery. This isn't accidental. It's design. The system doesn't need your freedom. It needs your payments. It needs you to keep swiping, borrowing, upgrading, refinancing, renewing. Because the moment people stop participating, the engine stops. And when that happens, the entire economy collapses. That's the paradox of debt slavery 2.0. The victims must willingly sustain their own captivity. No whips, no overseers, just bills, balances, and digital agreements we mistake for freedom. Here's the truth. Debt slavery 2.0 isn't a conspiracy. It's a perfectly legal evolution of control. In the old world, power was visible. Kings ruled, masters commanded. People knew who owned them. Today, ownership is invisible, abstracted through code, contracts, and corporations. You don't see the chains because you helped build them. Every subscription, every signed term, every financed gadget. One more link in a global system designed to turn participation into dependency. And yet, awareness is the one thing the system can't monetize. Once you see it, you can start to step outside it. You can learn to own less that owns you. You can pay attention to the contracts you sign, the loans you take, the habits you feed. You can stop mistaking access for freedom, because freedom isn't free, and it never will be, as long as the price of participation is permanent debt. So the next time someone tells you that you're reliving the dream, ask yourself whose dream it really is. If this opened your eyes, don't just watch and scroll. Hit subscribe. Because every week, on the history of debt, we expose the contracts, the currencies, and the control systems shaping your life right now. Don't be a product. Be aware.